You know, dealing with a narcissistic parent can be really unsettling. They cause you to question your own sanity. They cause you to feel empty and unloved, especially if this is a parent. They may even cause you to doubt your own sanity, which is a form of gaslighting in which you put out there that something is wrong with our interaction, something is wrong with the relationship, and the narcissistic individual comes back at you with a minimizing, invalidating statement, or they use invalidating questions to cause you to wonder, is it me? In situations where there are narcissistic parents, this kind of minimizing, invalidation, and gaslighting could lead to years of emotional and psychological neglect, as well as challenges. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some ways that you can manage a narcissistic parent that you can't necessarily get away from. But before we jump in, let me briefly introduce myself in case you are new. My name is Tamara. I'm an internationally and board certified trauma therapist. I'm licensed in mental health. I specialize in treating children, teens, and families, as well as adults who are dealing with trauma. Let's jump in. I have dealt with a lot of narcissistic parents, and I had no idea going into the field of psychology in college and in grad school that I would come across so many narcissistic parents. When I think of parents, when you think of parents, it's the idea that a parent is going to support and protect and love and cherish and, just unconditionally love their child all throughout life. But when you're dealing with a narcissistic parent, the normal flow of the parent-child relationship is destroyed. And that's mainly because the parent has a lot of holes and voids in their heart, and quite frankly, I believe, in their soul. It's really difficult to manage them as a child, as an adolescent, and as an adult child in life, because you're always going to come up against their ego. You're always going to come up against their high-minded, narcissistic thoughts and beliefs and expectations that really seems to have its own rules. I once had a parent in session where she would tell her daughter, I don't like your behavior. I don't like the friends you're hanging out with, and I don't like the boys that you're dating. I don't like anything that you do. We are so very different. You're like your father. You know that? You're really like your father, because I wasn't that way when I was a kid. And she went on and on, badgering this child. That's the best word that I can use, in a way where the child, when I separated them, the child came to me and said, Miss Tamara, I feel abused emotionally and psychologically. And that was because she had to constantly hear about her mother's high expectations, overly high expectations, overconfidence, which I talk about in this video right up here, that really made her feel invalidated. And it made her feel like every decision she made, every desire she had, every aspiration she had was this small. She didn't feel that she had the ability to stand on her own 2 feet. And that's because of the constant criticism from her mother, the constant critiquing of her relationships, the I'm going to say chronic re-educating of her daughter. And what I mean by that is she, taught her daughter certain things like how to cook, how to balance an account, how to pay bills, how to write a check. And when her daughter would do it wrong, she would sit down with her and re-educate her to that. And so it felt like the mom was saying, you haven't added up to my expectations. You haven't lived up to it. So let me show you how this is really done. And it didn't come across as if, this mother was loving and compassionate and wanted to show her daughter how to get things done. She needed her daughter to make her look good. And she needed her daughter to validate her own voids or prestige, or I'm trying to find the right word for it, kind of like her own education and her own prestige. She needed her daughter to validate her, so she re-educated her based on that premise. So what's going on here? Well, let's jump into boundaries briefly. I talk about boundaries right up here in this video if you want to go back and check that out. Basically, there's a variety of boundaries, but for the purposes of this video, let's stick to 2. One is fluid boundaries, and 2 is rigid boundaries. Now, if you kind of visualize this on a scale, okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, like this, One is going to be kind of like a normal level of boundaries, right? There are times I don't want to be touched. There's times when I don't really want to hug you, I need my privacy. I need to go in my room. So that's kind of like the normal part of the spectrum. Let's say we move up to 5. Now we're talking about fluid boundaries, meaning there's constant changes. There's no boundaries. There's permissive parenting. There's no, for example, doors on the children's bedrooms, and hopefully you didn't experience that as a child, but some kids do. Right here at 5, we're also looking at an inability of the parent to give you that adult space that you need to date, to think, to have a life, to feel, right? Because they want to control everything. So there's no boundaries. Now over here is rigid boundaries at 10, and this is when the parent doesn't approve of anything you do. The boundary is very rigid. You can't cross it or you're despised. You can't do anything that's going to move that boundary because that parent may explode and become, impulsive and angry and explosive, right? So, these boundaries right here on the scale are important to keep in mind when you are trying to understand your narcissistic parent. What can you do to manage this? Well, the first thing I suggest is question the parent's motives. Always ask yourself, is this what I think it is? Right? Are they really doing this? Am I really being challenged here? Are they really trying to break up my relationship? And if so, what would be the reason? What would be 5 possibilities in this situation as to why they're behaving as they are? What happened in my mom's past? What happened in my dad's past that made him or her behave the way they are today? Do they have trauma? Do they have unresolved mental health issues? Last question you should be asking yourself is, how do I manage this with healthy boundaries and with a firm state of mind or healthy state of mind? How do I deal with this? Okay, so always question. Be a little bit like a detective, right? You want to figure out why that parent is behaving as they are and if there are any legitimate reasons as to why. The next thing is disengage within reason. Now, sometimes if you pull out from a narcissist too quickly, they are likely to get upset with you and resent you or hold a strong grudge or shame you or highlight your behavior to family members. They are likely to also disown you and put up that brick wall that says, I want nothing to do with you because you've wounded me. We call that a narcissistic injury. Here it is right here so you can see the definition of that. So you want to be careful how you pull out of the relationship with your parent or how you put up the boundary or disengage within that relationship. Okay, be wise in how you approach that. The next thing is don't get even. I think you have to always take the high road or the low road when it comes to the narcissist. And what I mean by the low road is you really want to, let's say the narcissist is here, right? You can either rise above and be really rigid and firm with your boundaries and set some new expectations and dare that narcissistic parent to challenge you. Or you can take the low, humble, modest road right down here where you basically maintain compassion. You show that you care. You show that you're invested in the relationship, but within reason. So think of it kind of that way. Don't get even because you're not going to win. The narcissist may do any and everything they need to do to be on top. So don't get even. Find a way to go around their behavior. I had a situation like this years ago with somebody that I was working with. I actually brought them on as an intern about 7 years ago, and she was a very clear narcissist after I got to know her. And I actually told this intern, I don't think that this is a healthy thing. I think you need to work in your own therapy before we can move forward in supervising you to become a therapist yourself. And that was a narcissistic injury for her. I put a hole in her balloon, so to speak, and she really tried to manipulate everything. And it was a very sad reality. Thankfully, she didn't target me, and thankfully, she didn't target my clients. But what she did target were the people that were educating her at her school, her college, university. And that became really, really bad. I had to counsel even the staff at the university to explain to them that this is a narcissist and she's not healthy. We have to put up boundaries, but within reason. And, we don't want to get even with her. Let her, kind of destroy herself along the way. And that's exactly what happened. If don't get even, wait for them to either self-destruct, go above them, or go below and take the modest, humble route. Okay? The next thing is accept that they may never change. Narcissists have a personality disorder, which is a chronic, pervasive pattern of engaging in life. It's like someone being born into the world, very humorous, right? You know people like that. They're very funny, they're humorous, and you're like, how are you so funny, you know? And I've seen a lot of people like that in my lifetime, and they're beautiful people, right? You can't change them. That's just who they are. Well, the same thing with the narcissist. They aren't necessarily beautiful people, right? They are very, very harmful. They are arrogant. They are, really looking to stimulate their ego all the time, right? They put themselves before others. The parent who's narcissist puts themselves ahead of the child, right? So they're not beautiful people. They can't necessarily change because they are very much like the person who was born humorous, right? You can't take humor or a humorous disposition from somebody because that's just who they are. That's who they are. A narcissist, you can't necessarily erase that either, right? You can put them in therapy and they can learn skills to manipulate people. They can use, some of the tools that they use in therapy to appear better, right? And a lot of times they're pushed into therapy because of a divorce, a legal issue, or some kind of psychotic break or something like that. But for the most part, you're not going to be able to change the narcissist. Learn to accept that. Find value outside of this kind of a parent. We can't choose our parents. I've been blessed to have a wonderful mom. My father is a whole other story. And he left my mom and my household when I was 5 years old. And there are pictures of us. And, he looked like a caring dad. And yet he had this other life on the outside of my mom, brother, and I. We didn't know what was going on. And he was just a totally different person. I think he struggled with narcissistic tendencies and post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a possibility because he was a veteran, and he saw a lot, But what I realized in that is that I do have a mother that loves me. I don't have a father that wants to know me, right? He never did. He left at 5 and never returned. And so how do I be okay with that, right? How do you be okay with a parent that you can't change? Well, get comfortable with knowing that this parent may never change. You have to learn to accept it, work with it on the inside of you, manage those emotions, see a therapist, right? Journal, engage in mindfulness and meditation, kind of process your thoughts and your feelings about it, and then move forward in a healthy post-traumatic growth mindset. That's the word I'm looking for, right? So accept that your parent may never change. Find value, in life, friends, other family members, right? Neighbors, co-workers that truly love you. Find value with them and leave that narcissistic parent where they are. Don't try to change them. Don't argue with them. Don't get even. Don't try to have a happy, beautiful family with them because it's not going to work. You're just going to tire yourself out. Now, that doesn't mean give certain relationships a chance. It just means, and I am suggesting that if you've tried multiple times and it hasn't worked, don't try again. It's just tiring you out. I think compromise with wisdom is an important thing. I think a lot of people think compromising is giving their power away. It's actually being wise and it's rising above. Sometimes the narcissistic parent will press the right buttons because they know which ones will get you popping, for lack of a clinical term. And so if that's the case, then what you want to do is, step back, process what's going on, and then figure out if compromising in this particular situation is appropriate. And if it is, compromise with wisdom. Give a little bit of your power to them in the moment until you walk away, and then you have a lot of power. I'll give you an example of this as to what I mean here. I had someone years ago in my practice who was an accountant for my business, and some things didn't go right. He mismanaged something and things blew up at the end, and he flipped. And he flipped the script like that, and he was angry and explosive and yelling and screaming. And I could have gotten into that way as well, because you're in my business acting this way. And I decided not to. I decided to remain calm, cool, collected, thoughtful, objective. And I saw his behavior and his anger coming down little by little. And I realized in that moment There's power in compromise. There's power in not arguing and giving my power by getting upset. And so I want you to think of that as well. Practice it. Also, get your own help. This is not an easy situation. And in order to feel better, in order to be in the right mindset for your life, in order to have a strong heart and mind and balanced emotions, you may have to get your own help. And that doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. It just means you need help to manage a very difficult situation that you were born into. Thank you so much for being with me today in this video, guys. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful, and hit that subscribe and bell button if you want to get more videos like this. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.